What is up, guys? Welcome back to CageChat MMA. We're here for the UFC 268 preview. Of course, we've got two rematches, two titles on the line tonight. We've got Kamaru Usman versus Colby Covington 2, and Rose Namajunas versus Zhang Weili 2. And of course, we've got the People's Main Event opening up the card now. The card's alterated in the belt order, of course. We have got Justin Gaethje versus Michael Chandler in the lightweight division, which is probably going to be whoever wins probably gets the next title shot against Dustin Poirier or Charles Oliveira, whoever comes out of that at 269. And make sure before we get into it to hit that subscribe button, of course. Drop this video a like and go follow us on social media at CageChat MMA across all the boards, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, you know the drill. Go make sure to follow that. Of course, we're on the road to 500 followers now on Instagram at least. But of course tonight we've got Kamaru Usman, the pound for pound number one, against Colby Covington. Now, of course, there's a lot of talk about, should Colby get this shot? He's only had one fight since that loss to Kamaru Usman in 2019. Obviously, that was against Tyron Woodley. Tyron Woodley, that was a pretty... he was certainly over the hill, you could say. Kamaru Usman started that sort of journey down the hill for Tyron Woodley with that domination back at 235, where he picked up the belt. And of course, since then, there was a Vicente Luque loss that saw him leave the organisation. There was Colby Covington... as well, and Gilbert Burns also. Gilbert Burns who took that fight ahead of Leon Edwards. Leon Edwards has thought for the Gilbert Burns thought for the title in February, of course, unsuccessful. He had a good attempt. He knocked the champ in the first round, but then Kamaru Usman showed that there's a level to this game and took over in the second. And then Gilbert Burns said, he got too excited. But the first matchup between Colby Covington and Kamaru Usman was one of the fights of the years. One of the best fights I've seen, albeit in a very short period of time that I've been watching MMA, only about 5-6 years now, compared to some of the more hardcores, I guess you could say. But the fight, it had everything that you needed for a fight. It had the face in Kamaru Usman, it had the heel in Colby Covington, who had come into this, into fantastic Tommy RDA win, the Robbie Lawler win, David Meyer win even. And Kamaru Usman had done exactly the same. He'd beaten the likes of Leon Edwards, Damian Maia. They were on the same path, and there was even at one point, the only person they'd lost to, the other person had beaten, until Kamaru Usman stepped in there and stopped Colby Covington in that fifth round. The fight itself, absolute blind. Of course, it was dirty, it was gritty. Mark Goddard, had to come in and stop the fight a couple of times due to low blows and, maybe poor gamesmanship, I guess you could say, in the phrases. But the fight absolutely delivered. We thought this was going to be a more wrestling, sort of grappling heavy bout. But both of them came in, stood in the centre cage, and gave us one of the best bouts they could have, one of the best battles, of course. And if you remember the scorecards on that night, it was 3-1 one way, I believe. 3-1 one way, 3-1 the other way, and 2-2 going into that fifth and final round. So it would have been a huge round had it got to the end. But of course, Kamaru Usman stopped the fight. And since then, it has become a bigger stopping power, hasn't he? Kamaru Usman, obviously Gilbert Burns being a part of that, and obviously Jorge Masvidal in the rematch got absolutely flatlined by Kamaru Usman. That was the most recent bout, of course. And it shows where Usman is in this division. He's lapping the guys. Now, even Leon Edwards, if that fight was to take place, that would be a rematch also. So we've got Leon Edwards, Jorge Masvidal towards the end of the year at 269. And that's that card. If Masvidal wins that, you can't really give them a rematch after the two performances he had against Kamaru Usman. If Leon Edwards wins, he should get a title shot. You've got Hamza Chimaev in there. You've got Vicente Luque was the backup for tonight, although he missed weight, so he wouldn't be able to compete for the title had something happened to either the champion or challenger tonight. Pardon me. So yeah, it's not a stacked division because Kamaru Usman's so good, but there's a couple of people in there. It's a weird state now where you need the Chimaevs, the Vicente Luques, the Jeff Neals to step up and go, I want a title shot. Let's level up a couple of times now and get on the same level as Gilbert Burns. Gilbert Burns had a meteoric rise into this division, of course. He's back on one win, on a win now with that Stephen Wonder by Thompson win also. So he could certainly put his hand up and say, I want a title shot next. But, maybe I would say fight for Vicente Luque, but also their teammates. That fight's not going to happen. So it's Masvidal or Leon Edwards to him, as it is for Vicente Luque, or Nate Diaz, I guess you could say. Nate Diaz is always the wild card in this division, isn't he? Which Vicente Luque seems to be, might be getting matched up with until Hamza might put in that dominating performance last week at least. But yes, let's have a look at the tape. Of course, we've got 19-1 versus 16-2. We've got 6 versus 5-11. 4-inch reach is there for Kamaru, and obviously they're pretty much identical in leg reach also. And this this is where the fight, becomes a little bit different from the second one. We've seen the body of work that Kamaru Usman's put on. We haven't seen so much of the work that Colby Covington and the adjustments Colby Covington's made since that loss to Kamaru Usman. Obviously, he looked great against Zhang Weili, but he looked the same pretty much as he'd done in his previous wins against Robbie Lawler, against Damian Maia, against Rafael dos Anjos. He was very dominant, very pressure heavy, very good at getting the fight to the ground and absolutely dominating the opponent. Whereas Kamaru Usman, obviously, since the Gilbert Burns scheduled bout in September, he moved over to Trevor Whitman, and you can just see he's become an absolute stone cold killer. His jab looks phenomenal. His cross, he's got knockout power, which he didn't really show before up until that Colby Covington fight. And he's really molded and settled into this mold of being a superstar, being the Nigerian nightmare. He's really settled into that sort of skin, I guess you could say. Because you look at maybe someone like Rose Namajunas, when she picked up the belt, she thought the weight was too heavy. And it'd be interesting to see how she is tonight. Coming into this fight as a champion once again. She seems in a very different mindset as she was going into the Jessica Andrade fight. 2-3 years ago now. I mean, but for Usman, we've seen a lot more of what he can do. We've seen 2 knockouts from him, whereas we've only seen the one finish, and even that was an injury withdrawal from Tyron Woodley. Due to that rib injury, it wasn't Colby Covington more or less forced him to quit with a submission or a TKO. It was more Tyron Woodley wanting out. Now, that's no disrespect to Tyron Woodley, but as we've seen, the last 4 fights in his UFC contract, and of course the fight against Jake Paul, it wasn't a great show. It wasn't from a former welterweight champion. Many who thought was on a path of being on level with GSP in that division. Kamaru Usman is certainly going to be he's already above Tyron Woodley, but he's on that trajectory of being GSP. Maybe he hasn't got enough time or competitors at least, but he's done the same thing GSP done, and there's a lap in the field. And of course, GSP also came up against some of the future stars also and beat them. Kamaru Usman's not quite there yet because the youth of this division is still rising. But if he beats someone like Hamza Chimaev handily, who then becomes on champion, then maybe we'll have a different story. And of course, Kamaru Usman's on 14 wins in a row, 2 behind Anderson Silva, which is the record. So there's a lot to fight for Usman tonight, and he's certainly, it seems like he's come towards the end of the journey in terms of professional MMA. Not because he's getting any worse or any weaker or he's sliding on the card, because one, he's running out of challenges, and age is a factor, and he's been doing MMA for so long. He was a professional wrestler, of course, prior to that, so his body's taken a lot of damage and taken a lot of hard runs and a lot of hard miles. So it's come to a point now. I think he's 34, 35 maybe. So he hasn't got age on his side anymore, but he's definitely got maybe 2 or 3 years. But maybe he does want to do something like Khabib Nurmagomedov, where he walk away at the top. We don't want to see himself slide down the card and become a prelim and someone the UFC feeds to the new and up and coming guy to become a name on that record. Kamaru Usman doesn't need that and doesn't want that. And it seems like he's very financially secure. He's got the ability to he's very marketable, Kamaru Usman. So he's definitely got opportunities outside the octagon. So he's less required and less dependent on fighting inside the octagon every year and every couple of months. But let's have a look at the welterweight rankings. Of course, we've got Edwards versus Masvidal coming in December. That's gonna be a tough fight for Edwards. He should beat him, but for against Edwards Diaz, he doesn't make it easy for himself, does he? And we know Jorge Masvidal's the biggest star going into this one, albeit coming off the 2-fight loss, both to the champ. Leonard was on an 8-fight, 9-fight streak. Of course, he had no contest to Belal Muhammad this year, but he did beat Nate Diaz. Although the last thoughts around Nate Diaz's fight is him getting his jaw knocked for the 6th and that 5th round and almost losing that bout. There's a good chance Hamza Chimaev fights the title before him if Hamza Chimaev gets the right yes, and let's say he does get that Diaz fight in January. Let's talk about him getting a fight before January. Even if he gets a fight and he gets a very dominant win, there's certainly going to be more people putting their hand up for Hamza Chimaev getting a title shot than there will be Leon Edwards, just because of the star power that he used to bring. Equally, if Masvidal wins that fight, obviously Edwards' title shot gets taken away, but Masvidal has got a lot more fans on his side also. And of course, we've got Sende Luque, who might be equally deserving as Leon Edwards for a title opportunity also. So yes, it's a tough place, this division. You've got Belal Muhammad, you've got Neil Magny in there. So they just need to a bit more time, maybe a year, to break in that top 5, top 6. Maybe see the Wonder Boy retires this year. Maybe Mazda retires this year. Maybe Usman retires this year. You know, you've got a couple of people on the way up. Making Chiesa looking, very good in his last fight even. So yes, it's a tough division to really see someone be that next breakout star. I think everyone's in their peak in this division at the top right now. It's just unfortunate that Kamaru Usman's that good of a competitor. That Colby Covington, can he beat him? Of course he can. If he brings him down, be interesting to see what Colby Covington's done with his new team, of course, since maybe the back end of last year, going into this year. He left ATT, of course, with the dynamics in the gym not being too friendly, not being too team-like at the gym, which you need at ATT. And ATT obviously got Nunes, got Kale Harrison, who's going to be in New York tonight, funnily enough. Obviously, a contract up with the PFL is either up or going to be up by the end of this year. I don't know what the timescale is to that, but obviously it's going to look like she's going to be testing free agency, which is going to be interesting, of course. Obviously, that Nunes fight is there, but obviously Covington, had problems with Nunes, had problems with Yanni and Jacek, had problems with Masvidal, had problems with Dustin Poirier, maybe even with Dan Lam, the owner, of course, and that couldn't get results. So obviously he's moved teams. It'll be interesting to see what they'll be working on, how much they've been, bettering him. Because ATT is a fantastic gym. It is an iron sharpens iron gym. As is, at the moment, Whitman's gym. Obviously, you've got Rose Namajunas starting tonight, Justin Gaethje starting tonight. You've got killers in that gym that Kamaru Usman can feed off. Even at CageChat MMA, obviously, and Garry, who's making the debut tonight, moved to that gym. You've got Derek Brunson, you've got Gil Burns at the Sensei Luke, Michael Chandler, Robbie Lawler. There's absolute killers to learn from. And we'll speak about it in Garry in a moment. But Colby Covington, I don't see him getting it done unless he can get a takedown and he can get some sort of submissions, which he hasn't been known for. But if they can drill in some submissions for him, maybe a guillotine or a arm triangle or something like that, where, because we know he hasn't got knockout power, truly knockout power like Gil Burns or Masvidal does. He's got a good pace and good tempo where he can tire out an opponent, but he hasn't quite got that knockout punch. So I think he maybe tire out Usman, which is unlikely because Usman's got a fantastic gas tank himself, and obviously training with Trevor Whitman, he's at a higher altitude than Colby Covington is at. So naturally his lungs is going to have a far greater capacity because of the thinner air that he's been training in. But yes, Colby Covington for me doesn't get the job done tonight. We see Usman and still. As we do with Rose Namajunas. Now, Rose Namajunas is doing the co-main event, of course, her first title defense since becoming the champion, knocking out Zhang Weili in her last fight on the same card at 259, or 260 actually, it might have been, in Florida, of course. She looked phenomenal in that fight, a great head kick that knocked out Zhang Weili, but obviously Zhang Weili's gone on and tested her skills and looked to improve her skills with Henry Cejudo. How's that going to work out? From listening to BT, to be precise, it looks like she's been training on things that she's been training on for the very first time this last 6 months. Now, is that enough time between bouts to implement those skills that she's learned? Those drills, are they deep within her sort of her mindset and her intuition to be able to put them off instinctively, I guess you could say? Or is it going to be a fight or two down the line from now where they're truly, ingrained in her skill set? Because a lot of times people can train a certain position, certain sort of skill, but when you get punched in the face, you remember what you did before that. You return back to type, so to speak, and it'd be interesting to see what happens then. It'd be interesting to see what happens with Rose Namajunas, how she's developed for a rematch, or is she gonna? I doubt she's gonna go into that fight at the same mindset and the same sort of game plan that she did the first time, because Trevor Whitman's a genius, and we've got Pat Berry, of course, who seems to be very good at making the game plan. So yes, let's look at Taylor table. Obviously, you got 11-4 against 21-2, so a huge advantage in the experience of Weili Zhang. But of course, Rose Namajunas has been in the UFC a lot longer. Came through the Ultimate Fighter. Her only loss, her only loss after the Andrade loss was against Carla Esparza, who beat her and won the Ultimate Fighter. Of course, becoming the inaugural strawweight champion. Then followed on Yanni and Jacek. Rose Namajunas then took the crown, of course, with those two fights. She's very good in rematches. She's, this is the arena, Madison Square Garden, that she beat Yanni and Jacek in and won that title, of course. She is an inch taller. She's got 2-inch reach advantage, of course, and 3.5-inch leg reach advantage, which is probably going to come in handy with those high kicks, those leg kicks as well. If she chooses to decide them. But I do think she gets the job done. I think she gets a finish again. But we've seen Zhang Weili go into wars before. We've seen Rose Namajunas go into the rematch with Yoni and Jacek. Wasn't so much a war, but a fire round back and forth, which was a competitive bout that was in her favour. But Yoni and Jacek can always be dangerous. Talking about Yoni and Jacek, of course, there's been a lot of talk about what happens after this fight. Now, Zhang Weili wins. I'd imagine there's a trilogy. But Yoni and Jacek's come back and said she only really wants to fight for a title. Now, of course, if Rose Namajunas wins tonight, there's a very little chance he gets a title shot. So obviously Rose Namajunas is 2-0. If Zhang Weili wins and she wins quite comfortably, who knows? Maybe the UFC say, maybe we do Yoni and Jacek first, because obviously Zhang Weili versus Yoni and Jacek 1 was such an incredible bout. We've got I wouldn't want to see Rose Namajunas versus Yoni and Jacek 3. Obviously got Jessica Andrade in the winners, of course. Probably looking at Zhang Weili saying, you took my belt off me, but it was quite a lucky punch. It was a firefight back and forth. I could have caught you. Let's go again. Let me get my title back. Equally, she could say it to the same to Rose Namajunas. It's 1-1. Let's have a trilogy and settle it for the belt. Of course, her last fight was at 125, but she quite cleverly called out the 115 division. Of course, she'd already thought that to Shevchenko, and unlikely to get that title shot again after that domination from Shevchenko. So to go back to the division that she once held, the title, of course, and call out to previous competitors, was a smart move. Of course, you got Carla Esparza, who is deserved of a title shot. She probably should have got a title shot tonight ahead of Zhang Weili, but of course, the former champ almost gets a preference because it generates more interest and more income. And Zhang Weili, with all due respect to Carla Esparza, is a much more fun competitor to watch. But to have a look at rankings, of course, you've got Marina Rodriguez, who beat Mackenzie Dern. She's probably one fight away. It looks like they're going to make Esparza Rodriguez. But personally, if Namajunas wins tonight, I would like to see that Carla Esparza rematch, just because it brings the division full circle, so to speak. And that's what we want to see, of course. The Ultimate Fighter finale played out once more. But it seems like there is a better business opportunities fighting the likes of Jessica Andrade at the trilogy. If she loses tonight, I'll Zhang Weili in a trilogy. And maybe even JJ in a trilogy, but again, if you wanted me to rank those, I'd put JJ at the bottom and probably Andrade at the top, unless she loses tonight, of course. But for Zhang Weili, if she loses tonight, you could make her and JJ 2 for the title bout. I guess you could do that. That'd be fantastic. You can make her versus Carla Esparza or Marina Rodriguez, or you make it against Yan Xiaonan, either in Beijing or we have a UFC Shanghai, maybe. Those would all be great opportunities. Whether they want to fight each other because they are from the same nation, I'm sure they would, especially in a home in a battle in their home countries. I think that'd be a very interesting fight, especially both of them coming off losses also at that point. And of course, we've got the people's main event. We've got Michael Chandler versus Justin Gaethje. Two very similar personalities, and the way they carry themselves are very similar too. They're very similar journeys also. Both champions in different organisations. Obviously, Justin Gaethje from World Series of Fighting, now PFL. Michael Chandler, former former Bellator champion. And we'll talk about what happened in last night's Bellator and Punch and Brunch tomorrow, of course, as well. Fantastic night in Dublin. I wasn't there, unfortunately. I would have liked to see the scenes in Dublin live because they looked phenomenal on social media. But we'll keep that for tomorrow. Michael Chandler versus Justin Gaethje. The winner tonight will most likely get the rematch, or I say get a rematch. They both get rematches. Dustin Poirier versus Justin Gaethje 2, or Charles Oliveira versus Michael Chandler 2. It's a tough fight to predict because this is going to be an all-out war. It probably won't go past the first round. If it does, it'll probably get stopped in the second round, early in the second round, because of a lot of damage being landed in the first. These are two very good strikers with fantastic wrestling pedigrees and backgrounds that they don't really use. Michael Chandler uses it more than Justin Gaethje has done in his career. And maybe relied on it a bit more than Justin Gaethje has. Hence why Justin Gaethje is the highlight. He's got 9 fight bonuses and 7 fights in the UFC, which is absolutely phenomenal. He's coming off that buckle that lost to Khabib Nurmagomedov, and he certainly became the forgotten man in the UFC, especially in the lightweight division. That is, obviously Khabib vacated the belt with his retirement, and all the spotlight was on him trying to get him to come back. We then had McGregor and Poirier fighting in January. Of course, that was top of the billing. Many people thought that should have been for the vacant lightweight title at the time. on that night, but Chandler knocked out Dan Hooker in his UFC debut, of course, and he became the star of this division, maybe the next guy to take on the belt. Having been a champion in another organization, that was his next step, maybe. And of course, you had the unsung hero in Charles Oliveira come out, beat Michael Chandler, albeit he almost lost himself, and become the champion. And then obviously there was talk about Poirier and McGregor 3, and that took the headlines again, with the winner being, pretty much touted for the lightweight title against Oliveira. Of course, Poirier came out the other side of that pretty much untouched, and that's where we got to. But just in case he's going to come back now with a vengeance and look to, staple his name in this division once again, like it was a year ago, because a year ago he was the hottest prospect. He just flat, bludgeoned Tony Ferguson over 4.5 rounds, 4 rounds even. And we're all talking about him being the person to defeat Khabib Nurmagomedov. But of course, Nurmagomedov looked fantastic in that fight. It was a retirement fight, of course, and he took all the headlines. And Justin Gaethje, again, as we just mentioned, was put on the sidelines. Michael Chandler, on the other hand, he's been given a lot of praise since joining the UFC. He was the backup for that fight, of course, between Khabib and Justin. Had anything gone wrong, and then he made his debut in Abu Dhabi with that fantastic knockout against Dan Hooker. And then a very interesting fight with Charles Oliveira that could have gone either way. But to have a look at the table, of course, 23 and 3 against 22 and 6. Very similar records and experience in the cage now. 3-inch advantage there in height for Gaethje. Although his challenge at a longer reach, but a very much shorter leg reach. So it's going to be interesting to see how Justin Gaethje uses those leg kicks. Of course, we know Justin Gaethje from that fight against Khabib, of course. Khabib even said it was the hardest I've been hit. Those leg kicks are devastating, and Justin Gaethje, should he land those leg kicks, could very much hurt and stop the movement of Michael Chandler. Michael Chandler likes to sit down in that stance a little bit more, doesn't he? Then he puts his feet into the mat, I guess you could say. We saw it against Dan Hooker, a taller opponent, and he likes to come over with that overhand right, that overhand left, and then we stalked Dan Hooker around the cage. So whether he does that tonight, I don't know, because Justin Gaethje is the more violent, the more forward-thinking fighter, much more forward-pressured fighter than Dan Hooker. Dan Hooker's almost analysing each movement, each step as it's going, slowly going around the outside and then picking you off. Where Justin Gaethje doesn't have that filter, he just goes in there and blitzes you. Now, whether he does that tonight and gets caught by Michael Chandler, that's a possibility. But I also think there's a bigger possibility that Justin Gaethje lands on Michael Chandler, and Michael Chandler doesn't quite have the chin or durability to land. He might be able to withstand 1 or 2, but when that third one comes in, I think it's going to be curtains to Michael Chandler personally. And I think we look at Gaethje going, that's why we thought he was number 1 in the world last year. And he calls out, Poirier, Oliveira, and we get this lightweight division back on track. Obviously got Beneil Dariush, got Islam Makhachev, who look fantastic. I'd put those two together, hopefully in January or February, as soon as possible, really, for a number 1 contender after Gaethje or Chandler fights the champion, depends on how the calendar works out, of course. Now, for me, Michael Chandler, I was watching his interview on BT, a very well thought and spoken interview. He does like to almost make it a TED talk. You're going in there expecting to take notes and come out with something, right? A thesis on what he said. But he's come in and looked fantastic. He's very much fit in with this company, this organization. He's made himself a big star in this division. Also, he's made him someone you want to sit down and watch and listen to, albeit it might be out of jest. And he made a very smart call out. He said, let's have a look at Charles Oliveira or look at Dustin Poirier. Or, now whether this was him, bringing in maybe he was using his intelligence, now he's being interviewed by BT, which is a much more European audience. He called out Conor McGregor, saying Conor McGregor's going to need a dark partner when he comes back. And that's an interesting one, because it sets him up for if he wins for a big money fight, because he will then be number 1, if not number 2, in the division, which McGregor will want to be biting at as well. Wanted to get that title back, maybe fight it back against Dustin Poirier, that 4th one. Albeit I don't think that should be the direct fight. He needs to fight Nate Diaz, maybe, or Jorge Masvidal. A one-off fight, I guess you could say, in his return. But certainly, he will be looking at Michael Chandler going, there's an opportunity there for me. Eddie Alvarez beat him, and we saw what Eddie Alvarez done to, or what Conor McGregor done to Eddie Alvarez. So he'll be doing the maths in his head, the MMA maths in his head, and thinking that's a handy fight for me. And Chandler will also get big money for that. but he is a good wrestler as well. We know what Conor was lacking as wrestlers. So it was a smart call out for him, especially it sets him up for a win or a loss a McGregor fight. Because obviously if he loses the Chandler Poirier fights, swiftly forgotten about. And as Chandler's mentioned, he's here for a good time, not a long time. And there'd be no better way to have a better time than a Conor McGregor fight. Set him up financially forever. So yes, interesting. An interesting fight in this division. But I do think Justin Gaethje just about gets it done. Let's say inside 2 rounds with a finish. Now, of course, this card is absolutely stacked. We've got Chito Vera against Frankie Edgar. Frankie Edgar is potentially his last bout in the cage, of course. Marlon Vera coming in after the back of that loss, I believe, still to Jose Aldo, where it was a little bit too much for him. But of course, beat Daily Grant by unanimous decision in June. So he's 2-2 in his last 4. Yadong Song, Sean O'Malley win, Daily Grant win, and obviously the Jose Aldo loss in between those 2 wins. So he's going to be fighting another veteran tonight. Now, whether that veteran in Frankie Edgar can show his experience and his pace, a former lightweight champion, a former title challenger at featherweight, guaranteed Hall of Famer. But he himself is, 1-3 in his last 4, having lost to Max Holloway, Korean Zombie, at 155, albeit. But that flying knee to Corey Sandhagen that he suffered in the beginning of this year at February is still going to be on his mind. And I do think Marlon Vera does bring a little bit too much power, a little bit too much pace. The youth is on his side, of course. There's a smile on his clock, obviously. And of course, Frankie Edgar's in Madison Square Garden, which is as close as he's going to get to fighting in his home city, in his hometown, which is in New Jersey, of course. So for me, whether he wins or loses, which I think he will lose, it's probably time for him to hang out the gloves, unfortunately, and be inducted into next year's Hall of Fame, which is no shame that his career is stellar with what he's done. The other fight on the main card, of course, Shane Burgos versus Billy Quarantillo. Of course, Shane Burgos coming off that loss to Edson Barboza, if you remember. Edson Barboza, got a Manchester derby on the brain from earlier, which was absolutely diabolical. But we got a great card to make up for it. Obviously, Shane Burgos lost to Edson Barboza with that delayed knockout from Edson Barboza. He's on 2 fight losses now. That other fight against Josh Emmett, which was a fight of the year contender also. Josh Emmett's still yet to come back. He's going to be fighting at 269. But Shane Burgos lost that fight, I would have thought 3 times, twice in that time. It's a fantastic fight. Obviously, Billy Quarantillo from New York. Shane Burgos also from New York, so it's a derby. I guess you could say in football terms it would be a derby. And neither of these two are going to want to be disappointed in their own backyard, which is why this could be fight of the night. This could certainly have a bonus written on it. It could have a fantastic finish written on it. You got Quarantillo, who's 3-1 of his last 4. That lost to Gavin Tucker, which is a unanimous decision. But his wins, 2 finishes, 1 decision. Of course, he got a triangle choke prior to that against Jacob Kilburn in 2019. Of course, he made his step into the UFC by the contender series, beating Kamala Kirk in round 3. So that is definitely a fight of the night contender for us. We've got 2 impressive debuts, and eyes are going to be on the sport. Of course, actually, one of those being the prelim headliners, or feature prelim against Andres Michailidis, is of course Alex Pereira, the kickboxer who defeated Israel Adesanya, training with the now light heavyweight champion in Glover Teixeira. Now, how's he going to look tonight? Of course, there could be a lot of eyes and a lot of anticipation on him blitzing through his middleweight division, because again, similar to Kamaru Usman, Israel Adesanya is lapping competitors now. Also, he's fighting Robert Whittaker for a second time, having beat other guys. He beat Marlon Thor second time, of course. So going back around the mill, and of course Alex Pereira did knock him out twice in kickboxing. So whether that Alex Pereira has a very good win tonight against Andres Michailidis, who's vastly more experienced than him at 13-4, has a different skill set. He's more the grappler, he's very. I think he's a black belt in jiu-jitsu, so he's got a different side and a different skill set to Alex Pereira. So if Pereira can come out the other side of that in his UFC debut, it sets him up for a good start in this middleweight division. And he's going to get on the mic with a win tonight and say, Israel Adesanya, well past, of course, before I knock you out, I'm coming to get you again. And drops the mic and then exits the Madison Square Garden with everyone going, we need to see Pereira versus Israel Adesanya in MMA now. Let's book it almost ASAP. He could have the Anza Chimaev effect if he starts ragdolling competitors or knocking them out more so with his kickboxing. We've got Alex Quinter versus Bobby Green. Obviously, Alex Quinter coming back after having not fought for 2 years. Bobby Green, fantastic guy. This one's a fantastic prelim fight. This would be a main card on a fight. Both of them have finishing power. Both of them had that weird likeness to them. Bobby Green's fantastic on the mic, especially, he's had some quirky interviews, as has Alex Quinter. So it's a good scrap and a fun scrap as well. You got Phil Porter versus Chris Curtis. Again, at 185, you got Edmund Shabazian returning after that loss to Derek Brunson, which was a quite definite loss to him. Ian Jack Manson. So he lost to Derek Brunson in August last year. That was a poor loss to him as well. Really showed, it was a man versus a boy. Still, coming up, and they matched him up badly after that win against Brad Tavares, giving him Derek Brunson and Jack Manson. So thankfully, though maybe less thankfully, they're reining in the push to Edmund Shabazian and giving Nassourdine Imavov, of course, who's unranked, but he's coming out the MMA factory in France, of course. Training with the likes of Cyril Gahn out of that, and he obviously finished Ian Heinisch in July this year, of course. So Ian Heinisch, a good win on his record. He beat Jordan Williams, who's fighting tonight, of course. So yes, not so much of an easy scrap for Edmund Shabazian. On paper, you're probably thinking, it's just an unranked competitor trying to get him a win. But if Edmund Shabazian doesn't show up, and Imavov comes with his best game, don't be surprised, to see a bit of an upset tonight. And that leaves on to the prelim opener. And I'm absolutely buzzing for the size. Ian Garry, the future former Cage Warriors champion. Feels rude calling him former because he'd never lost that title. He got the promotion up to the UFC to call up. Obviously, he gave us a fantastic 5-round fight back in June against Jack Grant, who since then has signed for Bellator and had a Bellator win. But the future Ian Garry, 23 years of age, 6'3", fights in the welterweight division for how long I don't know, but he's still 4 or 5 years probably in this division. Before he might have to make that move up to middleweight just because of the sheer size of him. But he looked great against Jack Grant, and as we know, since that fight there was a lot of trouble going into that fight. Obviously, his camp, him and his camp didn't see eye to eye and was separated, of course. In that fight with Jack Grant, he didn't have a corner team. Paul Hughes, interim Cage Warriors featherweight champion, stepped in and cornered for him. Otherwise, that fight would have taken place. He obviously had trouble with his ACL prior to that fight also. But since then, he's so confident. He's got so much bravado, but there's an authenticity to bravado. It's not like Colby Covington coming in with a stick or a gimmick. He believes in what he says. He knows that he lives and dreams and breathes this sport. Thankfully. Conor McGregor, I was watching his interview with BT and with Nick P, and it was fantastic. He is the generation that was inspired by Conor McGregor in Ireland. We're seeing the fruits of Conor McGregor's power and influence, in particular in Irish MMA as a whole. And if you saw the UFC Connected also, you would have seen Ian Garry reading a letter from his mom saying that, you have to pretty much stick in college. Becoming an MMA fighter isn't a plan, isn't an option, isn't a goal. Very similar to how Conor McGregor's father spoke to Conor about his dream of being an MMA. Now, of course, back then, Conor McGregor didn't have the blueprint. Now there is a blueprint. But how many people can become Conor McGregor? Especially within the sport, there's probably maybe 4 or 5 names that you count that still don't reach the stature of Conor McGregor, but are in that ballpark. You're looking at Ronda Rousey, you're looking at Brock Lesnar, you're looking at that ballpark of names. But even then, Conor McGregor, it's maybe 1 or 2 steps above him. But it took him 3 years and 8 months to fight from an amateur background to making his UFC debut at MSG, and he's made everyone look pretty simple. He submitted Mateusz Figlak back in 2019, and if you've been a fan of Cage Warriors, especially the trilogy series, I believe he's fought on each and every single one of them. He's probably going to be fighting for a title in a year or two. He's just going to get matched up against Kent Kapanen, which is a fantastic battle next month. Dismantled him. George McManus, a very tough competitor, dismantled him. Lawrence Tracy, dismantled him. Ross McMahon, a former UFC competitor, absolutely dismantled him in round 2 with that head kick. Finished him, knocked him out even. And it isn't just like he's been given easy fight. James Sheehan, as he mentioned, he turned pro prior to Ian Garry making his either an amateur debut, I believe. got a decision winner, obviously got that contract, and it's been all uphill from there. And now he's gone over to America and improved. Hopefully improved. Training with the likes of Gilbert, Vicente Luque, looking at things in Derek Brunson at 185, resurgent. We got Robbie Lawler, you got Michael Chandler, who are at the latter stages of their careers, but still, still UFC caliber. Maybe not Robbie Lawler, with all due respect to him. Well, definitely Michael Chandler, Derek Brunson, as we mentioned, could be fighting for a title. Should he beat Jared Cannonier, of course. So it'd be interesting to see what he's done with Henry Hooth. A lot of people scored on the next McGregor, and you probably see the headlines tomorrow. Should he win tonight? Oh, he's the next Conor McGregor, the next Irish star, the next, the notorious one, the next guy to come out of Dublin, etc. And yes, maybe on a personality level, he's like Conor McGregor, but his lifestyle is nothing like Conor McGregor. He's more Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. He's more Israel Adesanya. He's probably a better all-rounder at this age than Conor was when he was 23. Obviously, Conor came into the game a bit more boxing heavy, but obviously, Ian Garry started MMA. He didn't start, he started judo prior to MMA, but he's not someone who's gone through boxing for 4 years and then diverted into MMA, how McGregor does or did. So, yeah, he's got submission wins on his resume. He's got a fantastic resume for a 23-year-old, and to be given the step up against Jordan Williams, I think it's going to be a fantastic fight for him. I'm going to be interested to see what he does tonight and how he's improved under the short time he's had at Henry and Standard MMA, and how he's going to go for this division. He was again watching BT Sport earlier, the weigh-in show. He wants Nate Diaz. Similar how Hamza Jamil wants Nate Diaz. Now Hamza Jamil's a year ahead of probably Ian Garry right now. If Ian Garry ragdolls Jordan Williams, then maybe we have the story in hand, and maybe we see those paths cross within the next 2 years. You could definitely see Hamza Jamil versus Ian Garry, for sure. But yeah, I'm very big on Ian Garry. I'm a fan of Ian Garry. There's a reason why it's called the Future, and I'm hoping that Irish MMA had a fantastic night in terms of the event, but obviously James Gallagher and Peter Keeley, obviously they lost their fights, but of course you've seen the scenes from the free arena. Absolutely buzzed them, especially afterwards. Been a tough 18 to 24 months. But then with COVID, etc., I believe it was their first event back with fans in, or at least sports and in particular MMA event back with fans in the arena, and absolutely blew the roof of the gaff. Made me very jealous, and shows what me being from London, of course, in the UK as a whole, probably has to do a bit better. Liverpool have got it. Wales are getting it. Obviously they're having their surgeons. They're having their gold Imperial, Mason Jones, Jack Shaw, etc. Corey McKenna, they're getting it. But when I was down in Cage Warriors, the trilogy, we had the Irish on one side, the French on one side, giving it their all. We had Nathan Fletcher fight on the previous night. The Scousers in there, giving it their all. But the night Shanks and Creasy were in the cage in the octagon, it wasn't very great. Now, whether London's just not picked up on MMA yet, whether it's still very much boxing heavy, of course, we've got Nathaniel Wood fighting out in London with that Brad Pickett. We've got Dominic Wood in, who's Cage World Champion. There's something where it's just not clicked, but it's in the process. Ireland's there, as we said. Liverpool's there, so we just need to rally around these MMA guys. But I was certainly feeling the envy last night, as I will be tonight. Not being able to watch Ian Garry make his debut in Madison Square Garden, but yes, I think he does get the win tonight, and it'd be interesting to see what happens and how he looks. But yeah, don't relay him back to Conor McGregor. Have a look at his fighting style and say, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, Israel Adesanya. That's the ballpark we're playing with here. And of course, in the early prelims, Gian Vellante versus Chris Barnett. Gian Vellante's very last fight, of course, he's hanging out the gloves. Got Dustin Jacoby versus John Allen. Belsic Bakat Zarin versus Bruno Souza. CJ Vergara versus Adi Osborne, of course, opening up the card. So a fantastic card, but it's really the two debuts in Ian Garry and particularly Ian Garry, Michael Chandler, and obviously the two title fights. And I'm actually looking to see what Marlon Vera can do against Frankie Edgar also. And of course, let's not forget Shane Burgos and Billy Cantillo in that New York derby. But yes, I'm going to leave it there, guys. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. We will be back tomorrow for Punch and Brunch. And make sure to comment down your predictions. Who's going to become Welterweight champion? Who's going to become Strawweight champion? Who's going to be hashtag and still, hashtag and new. I'm going to be about to see some trilogies get booked, maybe with Colby Covington and Zhang Weili picking up titles tonight. UFC 217, so all the titles change hands. Could you see that again tonight? Or will it be more a hashtag and still, like it was at UFC 230 when Daniel Cormier beat Derek Lewis, of course. And his brothers only beat Jack Brunson on that night. Also, maybe we could see another star born tonight in Ian Garry, or maybe see Alex Pereira become a star tonight, similar to how his brothers only became a star in that same arena. Yes. So I believe today, guys. Make sure to, as I mentioned, hit that subscribe button for us on social media, CageChat MMA across Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, of course. And I'll see you guys on the next video.